Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. It's Kim here, and today I'm playing with fabric again. And I put some pieces here on this is my glass mat. I don't use it very often. I mainly use it when I'm doing a lot of things with heat because I don't want to ruin my plastic mat. And I've got two garments. One is a lining from a skirt. I don't know what the fabric is, so that's why I'm doing a test today. So I have this lining. It's kind of a pukey yellow. Not really a mustard, I don't know, mustard yellow. And then this, and I will show you the full garment later on in the video. This is kind of the overlay on a dress top, the top of the dress. And then the top of the dress, the whole upper level had it's like a very light cotton sheer. It's like an interfacing almost that they used underneath this to make it less see-through, of course. And then there's a little piece of the lining here that is just around the neckline, both front and back of the top of the garment. And then the skirt has, starting an avalanche here, the skirt has the same lining at the bottom. Oh, I don't know where that picked up from. And then some more of this fabric. And there isn't any more of this meshy, it's like a cheesecloth that's been starched or something. I don't know how to explain it. It's very thin material. Anyway, I thought before I proceed with cutting it up, because this will take a different turn if it doesn't melt, I thought I would try melting it to see what happens. And so I've just put some squares here. I have two, but I don't need two of this one. I've just cut out a little square to do a test, and I have my heat gun here, and yes, it's going to make some noise. Sorry, but that's how it is. And so it's probably best to do one at a time, otherwise they're going to go flying everywhere. So I'm just going to hold it with my awl sort of in place and then see what happens as far as burning. I think I probably have to do it from this angle. So it's going to make noise. Either just fast forward or turn it down. I just want to see if it's going to melt. So first I'm going to heat this up. Of course, not pointing it at anything because I don't want to blow stuff around and I don't want to melt something I don't want to melt. And then from a distance, I'm just going to start to come around here and see. Oh yeah, it's melting. Okay, so we know that this one has melted. Now, I do this stuff outside because, you shouldn't be breathing this stuff in, but I'm just doing a test today. That's all I'm doing. I will not on camera do much more. But you can even see there's like little burns in this. What's nice about this is even these pieces, when they're melted, just like this, they make really nice bases for adding some lace trims. You can add some lace and a couple of buttons, and the next thing you know, you have a really pretty cluster. But I want to test it for flower making. So we know this one is a go. I'm just going to set it aside. I'm really curious about this meshy stuff. Now, if it's raw silk or cotton or wool, it's not going to melt. It will burn before it'll melt. So we're going to try it again. I'm just going to lift this up. Wow, this one's melting too. Melting and burning. So this one's got probably a little bit of cotton in it. It's probably 50% cotton and 50% polyester or something. but still, it's a nice effect. But I know I'm not going to use this for flower making because I don't really want the flowers to be burnt. But I can play around with this outside if I wanted to, and still use it when it starts to take on this, this different form from being melted. But it's such a nice fabric that I think I will save it to use for like a cheesecloth. So this one is out, but it'll still go in my scrap box because I will use it for a cluster. But we know it's out. So then this is that shiny, really shiny lining. So I'm going to again do this again and see how this lining works. Sorry, my fabric is curled up on me a little bit here. Just gonna straighten it and hold it down again. More noise. Whoop. This one's a melter, and look at how it bubbles up. Can you see that? And so we know this is going to be good for making flowers. So I'm putting this in the yes pile. But these, again, will just be used as scraps. I'm not going to go back to these. They will just be used to add some lace trims, or, this is just what I have on the desk right now. But, I can add that and a button or a couple of little pearls or some sequins in the center. I can go as far as making a cluster, and I could go back and melt this a little bit more, but it actually looks like a butterfly. So this would even be a really cute piece to put behind a butterfly. Let's just see if I've got a butterfly here that would work. This is my butterfly box. I want something that's not too big. Oh, here, this one would work. It's not trimmed or anything, but it'll at least give you an idea of what this could look like behind a butterfly. I like it both ways. So isn't that pretty? What a difference it makes. Now, as I said, I can go back and melt these little strings or trim them away and shape it a little bit more, but that's not what this video is about. And same with this. I can now take the two of these, the two different designs, and still rest the butterfly on there. And it's so cute. There's nothing to do. Just stitch them or glue them together, and you have an instant little cluster that you can add onto your projects. So just play around with stuff you have. Maybe you've got a couple of cute shirts that you were going to send to the thrift shop. I'd take them back now and get out your heat gun and play around. So that's a go. Those two are definitely a go in my test. Just going to get this back out of my way. I got to show you my drawers one of these days. And then this is the last one. This is that stretchy skirt polyester. I'm just going to put my all on here. Noise again. I'm going to warm this up. It's starting to come. I had let this cool down, so. Oop. Not my favorite. This one is burning a little bit more than what I like. I like it to not get so burnt looking. I rather have it melt, not melt and burn. So this one will become strips for making tassels. Now, if you watch one of my other videos that I did recently, I did some tassels from polyester. I just cut it into long strips, put it on a pin, and it will be sitting there until I'm ready to do tassels. So that's what I'm going to do with this one. It's not my favorite. I just don't like that burnt look. So 2 no's and 2 that are go for making flowers. So I'm going to stop the camera, go to where I was cutting fabric, and take these garments with me and show you my process for cutting those garments. So this is all going into my scraps. It might even just become one big butterfly, including this one. I'll just tuck it underneath so you don't see those burn marks, and pile it up together. And look, it's almost like a flower. Which is what we're making anyway, or what I will be making. So that's exactly how I could use this. Or I have some gems here somewhere. Where are they? I mean, this might not be the right color, but it gives you an idea. I just can glue that into the center and have an instant little clustery flower thing. So I'm going to stop the camera just for a moment. I'll be right back. Okay, here I am back at my cutting area in the other part of the basement. So this is that skirt. There's a little bit of a stain there, but I'm not too worried about that. This has all been washed, even though there's a stain, it's right in the material. And I did open this up when I was doing the test, and I cut out that one piece. Where did it go? That's stranger than fiction. Oh well. So yeah, I had the one piece cut out. Now it's still gathered here at the top. There is a thread holding the whole thing together, which is where it was put onto the rest of the skirt. So I'm just going to take my scissors, and it's about a 1/2 inch where the sewing gathering line is. So I'm just going to cut a 1/2 inch on the other side. And this becomes an instant ruffle. It is ready to use in my collages, whether I use it on the edge of a page or as trim of some kind. It is ready to go. So I'm just going to stick it in my ruffle box. I may further enhance it with gems and beads or sequins or whatever. What depends on what I'm working with. But that's an instant ruffle. I don't have to do anything. It's free. It came with the garment. So that opens this up now completely, but there is a seam here. And this is my new method lately of taking these things apart. Usually I take them apart completely. They must have sat on something that got it so stained like this, but I'm just going to run my scissors across here. I'm not too worried whether or not it is perfect. This will just be shabby trim that I use in my stuff. You know, when I start playing with this, and by the time I'm done, you would never know that it was a piece of waste. So that's going into my scrap box. And I now have 2 pieces, except there is a hem across the bottom here. So I'm just going to cut that off. Yeah, I'm just going to cut it off. I don't really need this fabric for anything. It's kind of a very flimsy lining, so you can't even cut it perfectly straight, which is why I'm going to cut it up into strips for my tassel making. So put that one aside, and turn it this way just so I can see. Now, when it comes to, this is a stitched seam, so when it comes to actually using this, I will rip it open and iron it out flat. It just makes it easier and faster to deal with this stuff now, knowing that I can come back to it when, and this goes into my scrap box of kind of yellow, orangey type colors. And this piece now is ready to start cutting. And it's a very squared off piece, so it will be easy for me to just line it up. And when they're silky materials like this, sometimes I don't bother to double it up. I just leave it loose at or single layer, because it makes it easier to tear or cut, and it just makes it easier to line up for the next row. And just using my rotary cutter, I hope you can see that in here, I'm just going to trim this one off first, just to get it straight-ish. And this will go into my scrap box. And moving it over about 1/2 inch. My blade is getting very dull. I have to redo it. And then again, so these are all being cut about 1/2 inch or ish. And I'm just going to put them all together to save for tassels. And if when I'm making the tassel I decide it's too wide, I can still trim them down in half if I want. This leaves such a mess on my cutting mat. I have to clean it after I do all these projects. And so on and so on. I'm just going to do one more in this width. And if you watched my last video, I also like to cut these in about a 1.5, sometimes 2 inches, but for the most part I've been going 1.5 to make more ruffles. So I'm just going to cut a few of those just to give you an idea. And so I will have a pile of ruffles and a pile of tassel pieces. And keep going here. And these will all be, like all the tassel pieces will be pinned together in one bunch. And all of the ruffle pieces will be pinned together in a bunch. And then when I have a sewing machine color of thread that is acceptable to turn these into ruffles. I don't want to be using purple, although purple wouldn't be bad if I was doing a yellow and purple journal, but yeah, I would use colors that are complementary to the fabric, as within reason. I mean, I have done odd colors when I know that I'm going to be putting something down the center and you're not going to see the thread. And even though there is a little stain in here, by the time I'm done, you're not going to see that stain. I throw all these garments in the wash after I've taken the lacy bits off that I want to keep. And if there's anything on the lace, of course, then I would hand wash that separately. But yeah, I take them apart and then I wash them. And if the stain is there, the stain is there. I just work around it. So I'm going to cut the rest of this off camera, but you've seen how it works. And so this will get cut into strips. I will do that and I will come back and show you that. But now this is the pieces of the top of that other. I don't know if you can tell that it's the top. And because these are odd shaped pieces, I really should have ironed it flat. But because they're odd shaped pieces like this, I could cut it into strips or I could save it to use for clusters or whatever, but I'm getting quite a collection. So this is why I did the melt test, and this is all going to get turned into flowers. Depending on the size of fabric, I cut them into different size squares. So usually I like to cut them about 3 to 4 inches, and then some smaller. So it doesn't really matter if it gets smaller and larger. But I will start off just cutting them into squares. Squarish. And, you know, I can probably cut it with scissors just as easy, but I don't, you know, this is fast for on the camera. So I'm just cutting it into squarish type pieces. And there will be some that are smaller. And it is sometimes faster to cut them by hand, but, and this is just going to be in my way, so I'm just going to chuck that. So there's kind of a smaller, this one's a little bit bigger. Yeah, maybe we'll go this way. This can go in my scrap box. And I will keep going. Now, this, just because of how the top part is narrower, I'm just going to make that into small, this whole piece into small ones. And then, and you can see this is, like I said, I should have ironed this flat first, but and I will continue and do this for the whole top. This is not fabric I would use for a journal. It's too sheer. I will keep a few pieces to do some accents on journals, but for the most part, I have other fabric that's in these colors. So if I'm working in a journal in these colors, I don't need this really for the journal. For doing the ruffles and for making flowers and tassels, yes, it's perfect. And it will complement whatever I'm working with, because I will add the right colors in to make it blend. So now I'm getting into where it's a little bit wider. So I'm going to go with about a 3-inch square. Some of them get to be 3-4 inches. Again, nothing too intense. As far as measurement, I don't worry about it. Now I could go on and on, but so we've already established that this meshy fabric is not good for melting. Same with this one, was not good for melting. So I am going to cut this off and treat it like cheesecloth. So it will go into my scrap things to use as, like, I'll iron it all flat first. It'll go into my scrap fabrics to use, you know, underneath something. I will pull threads, you know, make it look just like cheesecloth, because it's very meshy, and I know that I can play around and pull the threads. You can see here already that I'm pulling the threads. And you know, I'm looking at the camera because I'm from up above here, and it looks very yellowy. It's actually, this is actually a little bit more orangey gold, like gold color, not really yellow. So I don't know how that's going to turn out in the video in the end. But yeah, it is a very nice color. So it will complement any kind of vintage look if I add it as a, you know, a background behind something, just the same way you would use cheesecloth. So I will do this part off camera, take these off, and continue to cut squares like this. And then there's the dress, or the skirt part of the dress. Now, the skirt has a lot of small panels that they stitch together, kind of like an A-frame, so that it you know, fanned out, the skirt really fanned out at the bottom, and is of course more shaped at the top. I am not going to worry about these seams. I'm going to open up the seam and just start cutting it into squares, not worrying if there is a piece where, you know, maybe the square is kind of partly into the seam, I'm not going to worry about that. I'm just going to cut it up into squares as soon as I can find a straight line. This is not suitable for cutting into strips, although I could save a few of them to make some ruffles, but it's not really that big of a deal. So then inside is that lining that we also said, no, this one we liked. This one was good. So this one I would cut up into squares for melting, like for making flowers. And then this is more that same meshy cheesecloth type fabric, so that I will save to use as backgrounds in my work. So there is, oh, look at the, oh my goodness, they give you all these great big pieces are sewn in here. They must have thought there would be a use for all this extra fabric. Well, we'll find out. It looks like there's a lot here. I will open it up and see. Maybe I will have to keep some of this for cutting strips if it's such nice pieces like this. We'll see. So I will continue to do that and come back, because my plan is to get this done and be finished with it, because that's the problem. I keep piling things up and it doesn't get put away until I'm actually using it. And then when I use it, I have a tendency lately to only use what I need, and then the rest still goes back in the pile. So now, you know, I have a different mission and a different method to my madness, and that it's going to get done and dealt with and finished, put away. So what happens with all of these little squares? Well, I start round cornering them a little bit, just so they take on more of a floral shape. Now, you can fold it up if you want and cut all at the same time. It doesn't have to be perfect circles, but I pile them up in different sizes, and I probably want about 3 or 4 different sizes, from this being probably the smallest. Okay, it's still kind of square, but it doesn't have all these corners on it. And it's just based on how I cut it. That's all. It's more rectangular than square. That's why. Same with this one. I'll just trim that off. But this is the fastest way to use up all this fabric. Now, these garments came with beautiful appliques. When I'm done, I will show you the appliques as well. So I kind of pile them up into different sizes, depending on how they turn out as far as cutting, but they will all be done today. Now, I could cut them with my Sizzix machine, but this is just as fast. Now, I just cut that into 4, or folded it into 4. And you can see almost it's got a little bit of a petal effect. Sometimes when I'm heating them up, I will take and snip in between each one so that you have more of a petal effect when it's melting. But the melting will not be today, but I will come back to that. We've done it before, but I will come back and show you that as well when I'm actually working on it. Yeah, see, I had folded this. I probably should have made it a little bit more squarish instead of rectangular, but that's a good little scrappy piece. And I just fold it in half and in half. I could even go one more time so that it looks like an ice cream cone. And I can go a little deeper in to make more of a petal look, so that when you open this up, it's more petal-like. And you can see it's not perfect. It doesn't have to be perfect. I can take my scissors and just snip into that if I want to. And I will end up with an 8-petal flower once these start getting melted. So I kind of, like I said, measure them up into sizes. These bigger ones now will go in another pile. Ice cream cone-ish. Does that look like an ice cream cone? I've got ice cream on the brain because it's summertime and I love ice cream. And yeah, see, it's got kind of a flat side. Doesn't matter. Flowers are not exactly perfect, but I will have all this done. I'm going to stop the camera and show you the results when I'm finished. See you soon. Okay, and I'm back. So let's go through all the stuff that was done today. So these are my tassels made from that one lining, and I just have a pin here, and I'm just going to pin them all together to keep them organized. If you watched my last video, this is what I do to keep them organized for making tassels. I have a method of storing these that is both functional as well as inspirational, because I get to see all the colors together, and sometimes that's what you need to know what color you want to work in. And also it depends on how much stuff you have in that color. It might be the deciding factor that that's what you have to work in. So I store them all together on a pin, and then I have a shower curtain hook that I hook the pins on. And when I have enough complementary colors to do tassels, then I would do tassels. Like if I had 2 or 3 different kinds of this mustard yellow, then I would add in maybe some lace and trims and ribbons, and make a collection of stuff to make tassels. And I will do that with you in the future. So this is how I store them, just on a pin. It's pretty easy. Now, what seemed like seconds to you, okay, there's my tassel pieces. So there's not enough. I mean, there's enough to maybe work on 2 different tassels when I combine with other things. But, the more other things that I add to it, then the more variety in the tassel. So then this can stretch a little bit further. So I have that. And then these were the pieces that I cut. Now, those were cut to about 1/2 inch. These are the ones that I cut to 1.5 inches. And these I will use to sit down at the sewing machine and stitch into ruffles. The ruffles get, as soon as I have the right color thread in the machine, I look around and see what I have before I change my thread that has to get done, and I do them all at once. And what happens is I connect as I sew so that it becomes one long piece and becomes a ruffle that gets put on a card, just like you would have ribbon or trims on a card. I put it all together that way. So then this way, it then goes into my ribbon stash, and when I want, trim for my journals, I have the right colors. I don't usually add in any embellishments until I'm going to use it, because, if I add something in gold and then I decide later on, no, I wanted it to be silver or yellow or purple, it's too late. So that's when I add in things like sequins and buttons and, blingy things and stuff when I'm actually going to use the ruffle itself. But to have them stitched and ready to go is half the battle. So that's for ruffles. And I know that when I see these things, I know exactly that's what I've cut this for. But it's not to say I wouldn't use this to tie a journal if I wanted, or I could use these to make a finer ruffle if I wanted, because they look equally as nice done up and stitched. But I only do it when I need it. So there's my ruffles and tassel trims. So then this is all of my scraps. These are the hems, the seams, the offcuts that I will put into my yellow gold colors and work with to make snippets and clusters and different things like that, and just play around. I see there's another little piece in here. When I was working on these, I had all these little offcuts like this when I was making the squares. I don't know if you can see that. Yeah. And when I was making them, I just quickly ran outside with the heat gun, and I just did a handful, and I melted them a little bit. So I'm going to experiment doing some more. See, this one got a little bit burnt. But it's a nice color, so I don't mind it. I'm going to experiment more with doing more stuff like this. This would be fun to add into snippet rolls to create some dimension, and to add things like, it's the simplest thing, a little piece of gold, a little piece of pearls, or a couple of beads or sequins, and you've got something fun and unique that nobody else has. So this will go into the cluster or into the scrap bucket too, to further play with in the future. So that's what I'm keeping these for now, but they're just going to go in with the pieces I cut. There's another one there. And it doesn't look much like much at this point, but it will get better as we go along. So these were the shiny lining that I cut, and then there's a few lining in here as well, the top here. It really doesn't matter. They're going to be used together. So as I go along and I'm cutting these into round shapes for doing flowers, which is what I had done here, I will put any offcuts to the side and use those to make more of these little grungy pieces. So this is going to go into, I'm not doing them today, and I'm not cutting them into rounds today. I figured I'm going to cut them in rounds when I'm melting, like when I'm using the heat gun on them, because I may decide at halfway point that that's enough. You know, there's a lot of pieces here, but each flower, you know, when I'm doing these, each flower will take, you know, about 9 pieces of this fabric in different sizes to build up to make the flower, with a combination of maybe some tulle or some gold netting or mesh or something that I would further use to enhance it. But again, I will bring you along for that journey when I'm working on these. So this will all go into, I'm just going to put it in this basket for now, just to get it out of my way. So this is all stuff that I will work on when I'm making flowers, or use to work with when I'm making flowers. So it will go into a little baggie again, marked flowers. It'll probably be sometime this week because I'm anxious and excited to see what they're going to look like. And then, you know, this was the scraps that I cut off. And, you know, for today, it is going into the garbage. But when I start doing these ones and rounding them to make flowers, I may play with this and manipulate and see what I can get and how much I can melt it before it starts to burn, and see if I can kind of fuse it all together to make something fun. So then what is left? Actually, doesn't that look nice and small? That's the dress. The dress and that lining skirt is gone, but this is the whole pieces of fabric that are left. Now, I originally was going to cut them all, cut the whole thing. I told you I was just going to spread out the dress and start cutting. Unfortunately, the OCD kicked in, and I said, okay, well, I'm just going to iron the seams open because I didn't like that folded edge that I was coming across when I was cutting them. But the next thing I know, I opened up all of those panels individually, and I realized there's a lot here. So like, this is one panel, and I think there's 22 altogether. So I did cut some. I cut all of the bodice to make the squares here. But I decided I'm going to leave the rest of these pieces, which there's quite a pile here. And there were a couple of squares underneath the dress that I found after that are also in here. I ironed all the seams flat. You know, they will probably need another iron when I go to actually work with it, because this stuff creases pretty quickly and wrinkles pretty quickly. But it was easy to iron. I wish all stuff was this easy to iron. And yeah, OCD kicks in. I can't do anything about it. So, but it will now go into a flat bag along with this lining. There was quite a bit of lining as well, so I kept one whole panel just in case I want to do something else with it. I'm getting some other ideas of photo or fabric manipulation that I want to play with. And so I'm going to probably do that when I'm working with the flowers and see what I come up with, and then show you in a future video. This is the third layer. As it turned out, there was one under the skirt as well. So I have lots of this third layer, which is like a very thin, it's like a cheesecloth. So it will be fun to back behind photos, back behind clusters, all kinds of things, just to layer up and do different collages with it. It would make great flips and you know, just little bits to add into journals, just like we use the same way we use cheesecloth. So I'm going to put this in the pile of my cheesecloth so that I have one. It's already dyed for me in a nice color. I know it looks more yellow, goldy yellow in the camera, but it's actually it's like a linen ink stain, if that makes sense. So I will definitely use all of this. Everything here gets used up no matter what. So I'm quite pleased with how that large dress and the skirt from the lining from that other skirt is now condensed down to this. This is so manageable. I have a little freezer bag here that I will put these into to keep them all together. And this is how they will get stored in my bin of yellow fabrics, because while I have buckets for my scraps, I have bins for my fabrics so that when I want to work with them, I can go right there and everything is together. This will go in a different spot. Yeah, a couple of things I wanted to mention that I haven't talked about. When I say I wash all of these, I do put them inside of a mesh bag because, like in this case, they were not finished seams on this dress. And if I had thrown this in the wash the way it is, it would have just been a big ball of thread, which is a mess. It's hard on the machine. It's hard on the washer and dryer. So I stick it in a mesh bag just like you would any delicates. And for the most part, they're not soiled. They're just maybe dusty, or they have the, every house has a different smell, right? We all have our own house smell. I don't know how to explain that. You guys know what I mean. You walk into somebody's house and it smells different than your house because your nose is used to your house. So sometimes clothes pick up those smells, and it's not that it's an awful smell. It's just that it's not what we like. So I just like to wash everything for that reason. So sometimes there will be stains on these things that require more work that I'm not prepared to go into to finish it. So I just cut it off. If it's something that I can't really use or can't fix in any way, then I cut it off. But so that's how I wash these things, is in a mesh bag. This one, because it's summertime and it was a nice breezy day, I just threw it on the balcony railing and it was dry in half an hour. The other thing I want to mention, and I can never stress this enough, is safety. Now, I work with the heat gun. There's no way in tarnation I am going to bring a candle into my studio, not even to melt wax for wax seals. I use an electric burner that I can shut off and that I have control of. When it comes to working with a heat embossing gun and melting this kind of stuff, it should be done outside. Yeah, I did a couple test pieces, but I'm not going to kill off that many brain cells just testing. But at this stage in my life, I want to hang on to as many brain cells as I have, so I do this outside, and I do it in the winter too. I just go out there and do quick little batches when I need to. But also, and I can never stress this enough, is if a cigarette butt or a match or an ember can burn down an entire forest. And, proof of that is, look at what happened in Jasper. Oh, gosh, those poor people. Why would you want to take that chance in your studio when you have old books, scrapbook paper, fibers, fabrics, wools, all of these things that would just go up in seconds? One little amber, one little flame could take out your studio and your whole home. So don't bring candles into your studio. Use the proper tools in the proper places with, the proper environment around you so that you're keeping your house safe and your studio safe, right? And all your fun stuff. And the other thing is, you see how quickly these fibers melt and burn. We send kids to birthday parties wearing these fancy dresses that are made of this crap. Birthday parties, candles, fancy dresses, one ember. Just keep that in mind. Start dressing your kids in cotton. That's all I have to say. Anyway, have yourself a very creative day and a creative week, and I look forward to seeing you all soon. I'm on this fabric kick right now, so who knows what's coming next. Bye for now.